I'm Ian Hochberg, a birth father and producer of Birth Father, which is the first documentary about the birth father experience ever produced. The subject of this episode, of this vlog, is the origin of a birth father. When I first met with the director, the man who would become the director of this film, Richard Yeagley, along with the senior producer and advisor for the film, Adam Scher of New Entertainment, the script was an abstraction. Adam knew something about the story. He read it. It was very compelling, black on white. And Richard read it as well, was aware that there was something very dramatic about what took place here. However, it remained an abstraction. So Richard, in order to get a very clear, immediate focus of what this project was about, he said, "Ian, in 5 minutes, tell me the story." So now I'm going to tell you in 5 minutes what a script, what black on white words cannot convey. I was born in a middle-class Jewish home. My father was a war hero, my mother a housewife, and I never felt safe growing up. I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. I was very young, very creative, and something very, very wrong was missing. And I couldn't tell what it was, and it was evident very early on. Something was very wrong here. And my father, as much as he may have attempted, had an inability to love and accept me and accept my creativity in a way that was nurturing and compassionate and encouraging. And I grew up not really understanding what boundaries were, understanding what self-love, self-compassion, or for compassion for other people really was about. I didn't know. And when I was 11, my parents put me in therapy. They moved to a suburban neighborhood, not like what I grew up in. Even though I spent much time alone, I felt very much alone in this sprawling suburban community. And they put me in therapy when I was 11, and when I asked, "Why are you putting me in therapy? Why do I have to do this?" "Because we think something is wrong." And I grew up believing, because of this, that something was very wrong with me, and there was nothing wrong with me. And when I became to be sexual, I already hated the world. I had attempted suicide, and it didn't work. Technically, it was supposed to work. It did not. And I was about to attempt it again. I stole my father's service revolver because life was so bleak, and I didn't know what else to do. A family friend intervened. I went into a local mental institution here, which did me no good. And then a week later, I'm out, and I met her. I met her. She was beautiful. She was sweet and quiet and brilliant and a fantastic, amazing, talented craftswoman. And she could touch charcoal, paint, anything she did that was creative in the arts. It was perfect. And very quickly she started suffering with me. I went from a mental institution, suicide, and all of a sudden a week later I'm living with someone and I can barely live with myself. And a year to the day later, towards the end of this failing relationship in which she suffered immensely in my presence, she became pregnant. And she would not abort. And in a lightning rod moment, I began to understand what self-respect is. I began, and though it took years and years to nurture, it was the beginning of something. I was Gary Cooper on the mountain in the film Sergeant York, who's on his way to kill a man in a storm. And God spoke to him, and he had a reversal, an awakening in his life that I had. It may have been a Hollywood film. For me, it was very real. And I began to understand, little by little, what it is to respect a woman. And I knew that I stood alone because I had no support. I was terribly frightened and very alone in those 9 months. We were estranged. We would never speak again. And I was on my own. And I wasn't talking with my family, and I was frightened. And yet, I ran towards my responsibility rather than away from it. And I knew that most men probably would have taken off. It is easy to run away from this. It is far more challenging to stay the course and stay with such inaction as this. And I ran towards it and I embraced it. And whatever she asked me to do, I did. Whatever support she asked me for, I was there and I came through. And when my son was born, I cried decades of tears. And if anyone, a family member, said, "You're just a sperm donor, why are you so upset? Just forget it." And I said, "Never, ever say that to me again." I was married and I became a father to my daughter after this had happened. And I said to this person, this family member, "I love that boy. He's as much my child as my daughter from my marriage." And we reunited. And then it ended. My son ended the relationship. And I did everything I could. The only thing left for me not to have done was to not have cared at all. The only thing I could have done that I hadn't done so far was to forget him and attempt to convince myself this never happened. And I would never do that. And I never will. And if anyone ever brings up to me about being this just being an event that happened and it's over, it's never over. I carried this with me through this life and to every life to come. And I'm going to do something with this. And I'm producing this film because there are many lives of those who are affected by adoption who are absent of a father. And I'm here to tell those people that we do exist, and I know of other fathers who stood up and did the right thing as I have done. And I also know that most men would run away. And there are those of us who came forward and did what was right. And that is why this film is made, to help those who are in suffering, to lessen their suffering. There is much information that is about birth mothers and adoptees. Nothing, almost nothing exists about the fathers, and this film is going to start changing that. Thank you for your time, for your 5 minutes. And if you are considering supporting this film as we are seeking funding for it, or sponsoring this film, or if you know of speaking engagements with which I can speak as a birth father, I am available. And for more information, please email me at ianhochberg@gmail.com, Hochberg. And thank you for your attention and your interest.